Welcome to The Claw. I'm Eric Holtzclaw, Chief Strategist at Liger. The Claw is the marketing podcast for C-suite executives. I am joined today by Ben Guttmann. He is the author of, simply put, Why Clear Messages Win and How to Design Them. Yes, the book. Make sure you show that book off as you're doing it. It takes a lot to put a book together. So Ben, thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Eric. It's great to be here.
And we talked right before we came online that you've got several other things. So there's some other things you do too. So you did the book, but you also teach.
I teach. So I wear a bunch of different hats. So the book came out just about a week ago, which is super
Congratulations.
Exciting. Thank you. It's a long time coming, right? It takes about a year, more than a year and a half. I mean, you've written a book to get something out there, from the proposal, the agent, for the editing and publishing, all this stuff. But it's a great journey. I'm really happy about how everything came out. So that's the most recent thing. I also am an adjunct professor at Baruch College here in New York City. I love doing that. I will tell anybody who is remotely interested, I will talk their ear off about why they should teach, because it's like the best thing that I do. Doesn't pay you that much, but it is a wonderful experience either way. And then currently I do some consulting, but previously I ran a marketing agency called Digital Natives Group. I ran that for 10 years. It was a lot of fun. We worked with clients like the NFL and I Love New York. And we eventually sold that business about a year and a half ago. So it's been quite a ride.
Yeah. And so before the agency, so how did you get into that space? Did you at the age of 5, you're like, I want to start a marketing agency?
It not terribly far off, right?
Okay.
So
right.
I was, when I was in college, I was a big student government nerd, and I was really into that. And I was focused doing all those things and not quite doing the internships and everything else that my classmates were doing. But fortunately, I had a professor who, a lot like me, had his own agency, and he came up to me after class one day and said, I know you kind of want to maybe start your own thing. We need some help with digital. Maybe we can figure something out. And one thing led to another. Met his partner. Their office was in Westchester, just outside of New York City. I lived in Manhattan at the time. So I got in my beat up 94 Honda Accord, and I drove up to their office. We slapped our logo on the basement, on the wall in the basement. And we worked with them a little bit. We were a bunch of knuckleheads, so we didn't really get a lot of work from them because they worked with Fortune 500 clients. But we cut our teeth there with their mentorship, and we worked with local ice cream shop, local camera shop, and eventually, bit by bit, worked our way up to some of those big brands that I mentioned before.
Nice. That's a great little story, to let you incubate down there with people who are doing the big thing, and it's cutting your teeth on things like the local ice cream shop. You can test stuff pretty easily and then figure out how to magnify. That's a great story.
Oh yeah, I'm very grateful for that experience. It was truly formative, and it was good to have that type of mentorship available when you're a bunch of knuckleheaded 22 23-year-olds. So eventually we did end up moving out of their basement, and we got an office here in Queens, in Long Island City. That was a ton of fun. We hired some more people. We got a bigger office. And then COVID hits, get rid of the office. And eventually, a year or so later, we ended up selling the business. But it was a really awesome ride. I'm so glad I did it. I miss a lot about it. But I'm very happy that when we sold the business, we found a home for every client and a job for every employee. So that was really important for us.
Yeah. Congratulations. That's a great story. And it's always, I talk about, because I run a marketing firm, but I'm a serial entrepreneur, and every single business has an exit. There is an exit of some sort. And so preparing for and managing that is just as important as starting the business and managing the business and running the business and scaling the business. What are you going to do with it at the end? And many other relationships you have in life, it's like, oh, this is supposed to be forever, and businesses are not that way. So how do you look at those and kind of enjoy what they are? So talk to me about the book. So did the book happen as part of the agency? Is it something you've always wanted to do? Why a book?
A little bit of all of the above, right? So we were fortunate. One of the niches we ended up in our agency, we did work with a lot of publishing houses and different authors on all sorts of projects. So I did have exposure to that universe, which certainly helped, as having access to other authors and learning from them and getting mentorship from some of my former clients was awesome. But the genesis of the book is there's a question that drives everything, which is why do some messages work when others don't? And from running a marketing agency, that's what they hire us to do, right? They hire us to figure that out. We don't always know why. We don't always know. We can't explain it to somebody else always, but we know how to get there. And that's what it's like in the day-to-day business of running a marketing agency or working in marketing. But once I sold the business, I was able to have that question, which is still lingering in the back of my head, come to the front and say, okay, well, how do I dig into this problem a little bit more? So I looked into the research, looked into case studies, I looked into the data, and that's how we ended up with a 208-page book, which answered that question.
And so, but in the thoughts of putting it together, did you feel like, because I wrote mine when I sold a business. So I basically sold the business in 2012 and I wrote the book as I was on my way out. So I kind of feel like that book was a way to encapsulate that part of my life. It's like, I'm going to put all of this in it. It's kind of like a way to cathartically go back and say, and now that's over. And I've officially put it in this book. So were you thinking about this before you decided you wanted to sell the agency, or was that an impetus at all, or just curious?
That was definitely, selling the agency was definitely a kick in the butt to spend the time doing this. It's one of those things that, especially being in the B2B space, how much a book can be a marketing asset for an individual or a company. And it probably would have benefited us if I wrote this book 5 years prior and I still had the agency and I could, had a direct upsell for, hey, you like my book? Go hire my agency to go do X, Y, or Z. That would be great. But as you know, it's a little bit harder to kind of walk and chew gum, right? When you're in the thick of things, it's hard to do the thing for yourself. The painter's house is never painted, right? We always struggle to update our own website. People will pay us, 6 figures to do web projects for them, but doing our own website was like, I don't know if I could spare the time to update it. So certainly it would have been nice to do it ahead of time. Do I look at it as like a valedictory thing? Not necessarily. There's definitely parts in here where I talk about in the abstract some of the experiences and the clients and stuff that I worked with. But I purposely didn't want this to be a book that was like the war stories, how to start an agency type of thing. I wanted it to be about a topic which is interesting to me, which is why do people do what they do? And I just had another guest on recently. I was listening to the episode, same question. A lot of us in marketing have the same question, right? Why do people do what they do?
Yeah.
And I wanted to look at it from the messaging angle. Because also, every time you write a book, you have to be really comfortable talking about it for a long time, because you're going to talk about it, with friends and family. You're going to talk about it on podcasts. You're going to talk about it at an event. And I didn't want to spend all that time kind of looking in the rearview mirror on things. I wanted to spend it, talking about these interesting, deeper topics.
Yeah, and that's interestingly what you talk about is, so I'm a recovering technologist. I ran development shops early in my career, and what I loved was I've always seen technology as an enabler. And I ended up in the research space because we would build technology and then people would use it in a way we didn't expect. And I was always like, why?
Sounds about right.
Why aren't you using it the way we thought? And so the research firm, that's all we did, was we would have things brought to us that weren't working, that the message wasn't right, whatever, and we would find out why. And then that's why I like marketing, because marketing is a combination of both tech and understanding who your user is and applying it. Like it's one of the most, you literally have to do it. Like where, technologists can still try to get away with launching a product that they haven't put in front of a user. And, people who are doing internal communications may or may not think about it from a why message, but with marketing, you're not going to be successful if you don't get behind the scenes. So, so tell me a little bit about the thesis of the book. So like, what's it broken down? What am I going to get from it if I buy it and start to read it?
Certainly. So the book is called Simply Put, Why Clear Messages Win and How to Design Them. And so the why and the how are the two major pieces of the book. So you mentioned your background as a technologist. My background is as a designer. And I wanted to look at this as a design question. So what's the current state? Well, we look and we say, we as consumers of the world, users of the world, prefer things one way, but as people who have to send messages, people who are marketers or politicians or advocates or whatever, when we're in that role, we act another way. So there's a difference there. When we're receivers, so buyers, voters, donors, students, all those different hats, we like things that are fluent. And so we know the word fluent, right? It's English, Spanish, Mandarin. I could be fluent in. I could be fluent in baseball or cheese or anything else. It's where things are flowing. That's fluent. That's the origin of the word. If you ask a cognitive scientist what fluency means, they're going to say, essentially, it's when it's easy to take something from out in the world, stick it in your head, and make sense of it. So something's easier to see, to hear, to read in terms of a perceptual part, but also easier to process, easier to make sense of. When you look at a host of different experiments across all sorts of different topics, anything that takes less mental load, we are more likely to trust it, more likely to buy it, more likely to like it. And if we're a marketer, that's what we want. But the other side is also true. If we have to sweat and break our back to understand something, well, we don't like it, we don't trust it, we don't buy it. And that's obviously not what our clients are hiring us to do.
Right.
So that's what we want, right? That's the scientific underpinning of why simplicity is so effective. But when we're on the other side of the ball, when we're a sender, and we're doing that marketing, doing that sales pitch, we are facing internal and external obstacles to getting to that. Internally, we have what's known as an additive bias. We're more likely to add than subtract. If I'm face of a puzzle or a challenge or a task, I'm more likely to add more words, add more widgets, add more pages, whatever it's going to be, as opposed to maintaining or subtracting from that option. That's one of the mechanisms working internally. Externally, we also have all these incentives, which you and I will know, where, hey, it's easy to hide behind a wall of words, right? You go and you sit in a meeting and you don't really know what the client's asking you, and you just throw up the wall of sound. Hopefully something there sticks. You can filibuster and get out of there to survive.
Right.
You get your picture in the paper for building a bridge, but not for maintaining a bridge. All these different things on the outside. So there's the gulf, right? When we're receivers, we want things one way. When we're senders, we're pushed to do things another way. So they're in the middle. That's where this book comes in. That's the how. And I look at this from a design perspective.
And so what I'm going to do is take you from there, because that's a great place to stop. So you have a gulf, a how. So I want to talk about how the book addresses it when we get back. So that way we'll get people to listen through the commercial. So you're listening to The Claw. I'm Eric Holtz-Claw, Chief Strategist at Liger. The Claw is the marketing podcast for C-suite executives. We're talking today with Ben Guttmann. He is the author of Simply Put, Why Clear Messages Win, and How to Design Them. And we're learning that there are people who create messages and people who receive them, and there's a gulf between them. So this book addresses that. We're going to talk more about how that is in the next segment.
The Claw podcast is brought to you by Liger. Liger is a hybrid marketing firm combining a brand strategy consultancy and a production house that offers the full range of content and creative services. We can be your entire marketing department or your entire marketing department's favorite people to work with. We save the world from boring, broken marketing by putting businesses in brand therapy so they can express their most authentic, memorable selves. And then we share their story so they can be known. For more information, visit ligerpartners.com and follow us on our social media platforms.
And we're back. You're listening to The Claw. I'm Eric Holtz-Claw, Chief Strategist at Liger. The Claw is the marketing podcast for C-suite executives. I'm joined today by Ben Guttmann. He is the author of Simply Put, Why Clear Messages Win, and How to Design Them. And in the first segment, we talked about the fact that people send messages and we receive them, but we're think about them very differently, like what is happening on both sides of that. And there's a gulf in between, which is where all messages go to die. So how do I make sure that message doesn't fall into that big abyss?
Exactly. So I mentioned a moment ago the design hat that I wear, right? So I looked at this as a design problem. How do we bridge what receivers want and what senders by default do? And I identified, when I look at all the different elements here, 5 core principles to a simple message, to an effective, fluent message. And these are not a checklist. These are not a step-by-step program. They're design principles to use to put in our toolkit as we're developing a message, be it a slogan, be it a business proposal, an email, a website, whatever it's going to be. So number 1 is beneficial. what does it matter to the receiver? What's in it for them, right? This is sales 101, right? Features versus benefits. We don't want the thing, we want what the thing does for us. So that one is a little bit intentional where it is, right? That's the first piece, because if you don't get that right, everything else is much more difficult.
Right. Okay.
Number 2 is focus. Are you trying to say one thing, or are you trying to say multiple things at the same time? Is this one idea, or is this 3 ideas in a trench coat, right? What is the priority? And priority is a singular word, by the way. Number 3 is salient. Does it rise to your attention? Does it stand out? Does it stick out? Is it contrasting? Does it zig where everybody else is zagging? It's a noisy world. How do we stand out? That's what salience is about. Number 4 is empathetic. Are you speaking in a language that the audience understands? Literally, in terms of you're using language and words that they can get, but also are you meeting them where they are emotionally, what their motivations are, and understanding their reality. And then finally, minimal. This one's also slightly on purpose where it is, which is everything you need, but only what you need.
Yeah.
So you need to know all these other pieces to really have a good sense of that. But minimal is everything you need, but only what you need. And it's important just to leave with this distinction on minimal. We are not talking about a minimal number of words or sentences or paragraphs or pages. We are talking about a minimal amount of friction. So that's when you're designing, if you're a UX designer, you're dealing with friction, right? You want to minimize the amount of friction between where the user is and where the goal is that you want to get them to.
Yeah.
So those are the 5 elements that if you operate on them, you're going to be in good shape to be a more effective communicator.
I like that. That is a encapsulation of many things that my team and my clients will hear me sort of talk about, but not in a package. It's like, I use the word visceral, like make me love it, make me hate it, but at least make me pay attention to it, right? Like I want to see it and understand it. So there's a lot in that. That's a very nice way to kind of put it together. And it's also why not everyone can do marketing. Because, that is the thing that you run into people and are like, oh, you just do words and pictures. It's like, it's a lot harder than that. Like you got to think about that some more. Where do you see, maybe you don't, do you see organizations because I bet like you pay attention to all kinds of messages and you're like, oh my gosh, like that message, like you're probably like judging them all the time because you've got this kind of special knowledge in the category. Is there one of those that you see people make, like they don't do well more than the others?
I think that you could always tell when somebody has had some sort of experience in marketing or sales based off of the beneficial piece of this.
Yeah.
If you've ever been in charge of sales, working as a summer job, at a Best Buy or something, or running a marketing agency, anywhere in between, you understand that people don't want the thing; they want what the thing does for them, right? And there's one of the most famous ad campaigns of all time. About 20 years ago, Apple launches the iPod. They don't go out and they say, hey, here's a 4 gigabyte hard drive, this many pixels on the screen, this many colors. Those details are there. You can go find them. But what's their campaign? It's 1,000 songs in your pocket.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the benefit. That's what you get. All those other things mean that you get 1,000 songs in your pocket. I don't care about how many gigabytes I have or how many milliamps are in the battery. I care that, I can go walk out the door and I can listen to every piece of music I read.
Yeah.
That is a benefit. That's a beneficial message.
Yeah. I love that. We talk to people when we're looking at their websites and they have a lot of we messaging and it's a catalog and all this other stuff. I'm like, stop, right? Like and make it a magazine, like make me want to open it up and read it and see the stories. And I'll use like a tire store as an example. Tires are the most boring thing on the face of the planet. But if you tell me some story about why I should buy one over the other or how it's going to keep me from that's going to be more compelling. I don't know what size tires or whatever I have. I don't care either, right? It's like I have a sports car. What should I put on my sports car? So very nice. So what's next for you? When I did my book, I had I did 70 different speaking engagements in 6 months or something. So you're probably doing a bunch of podcasts and things. But what else is on the horizon? Another book, another company, just continuing teaching?
Maybe a little bit of all of the above, right? I've noticed that when I speak to other authors, there are people fall in 2 camps. Either love writing the book or they love having written the book. And they hated writing the book. I personally liked it a lot. I really enjoyed the process, researching and writing, and even the editing was an overall enjoyable process. So I would totally do it again. I don't know if I'm doing it tomorrow, but talk to me in a few years. There might be another topic which scratches the same itch. So that's that piece of it. I'm going to teach until they kick me out of that school. I love teaching there. It's the City University of New York is the greatest engine of economic opportunity in this country, perhaps the world. Actually, if you look at all the rankings of the most diverse institutions, the greatest social mobility indexes in terms of people coming in, one income level going out at another income level, it is a life-changing institution, and I'm a huge fan of it. Nice. So you'll always hear me singing the praises of CUNY. Right now I'm doing some consulting work. It's a lot of fun. I've got some great clients. At some point I'll probably start another business. I'll let you know when that'll be. We'll see what's in store. But right now I'm enjoying these different pieces. As far as the book promotion, you're right. The podcasts, it's been an honor to be on a number of podcasts over the last few weeks. And I've got a bunch more kind of in the pipe. There's been some events that I've done in real life. There's some events virtually. And I'm always looking to do more of those too. So if you're listening and you feel like this could be a fun topic, shoot me a note. I'd love to chat.
So 2 things. One, I accidentally start companies. I didn't mean to start any of the ones I've done, and I've now done 2 recently. And then I noticed the same thing about people who'd written books, and they seemed to fall in 2 camps when I would talk with them. They were the people who would never do it again because they hated the editing process, and people who said they liked writing a book, liked the edit. And I loved the editing process. It was my favorite. I would send something over and the editor would come back and say, I need more in this paragraph, or I don't really understand what you're saying here. And it was such great feedback because I was so in my head about how I was telling the story. So that was my observation, is the people who hated all the red lines that came back and those that were like, look at all that stuff I need to fix, So.
Well, I got to say, this is a very high pressure book to write and to promote because just of what the message is.
Oh, 100%.
I was joking the other day. This is the one book you should judge by its cover, right? If I wasn't able to work with my team and get a good title and get a clean design and get some solid back copy, then you shouldn't believe me, right? Yeah. But if you like that part of it, you're going to like the rest of the book. Also, because writing a book about simplicity or communication or messaging, every time I talk about it, either on a show or I write something about it, I'm being judged off of my own stuff. So it's a little bit of a pressure.
There's some pressure. Yeah, there's definitely some pressure. Well, so we'll put links to getting to the book and all those kind of things. How best to reach out to you? Where's your favorite sort of place for people to connect with you?
I would say my website's got all the stuff there. It's benguttmann.com. My last name is Guttmann of 2 T's and 2 N's. Everybody gets it wrong. There are other Ben Guttmanns. They're nice people, but if you want to find me, it's 2 T's and 2 N's. benguttmann.com, or if you just go to simplyputbook.com, that'll also forward to it. I got the book there. I have a free chapter you can download. I have an email newsletter I send out every Tuesday you can subscribe to. And if that's not enough, you can follow me on LinkedIn. That's the other best place to get me.
Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Eric. This has been a blast.
Yeah, so I've been talking today with Ben Guttmann. He is the author of Simply Put, Why Clear Messages Win and How to Design Them. And I will tell you all of my B2B marketing firm and companies, you need to understand this. B2B companies obviously, often overcomplicate the message. Like, let's just simplify it. You're selling to a human being. They need to feel all the same things they do when they go and buy ice cream. It's just as important. So you've been listening to The Call. I'm Eric Holtzcott, Chief Strategist, and until next time.